Welcome back to Efficio's Transforming Public Procurement Microcast series, where we continue to break down and simplify the key elements of the new Procurement Act legislation. Just as recently as last week, the Cabinet Office has published its latest TPP guidance, this time on covered procurement. I'm joined by Scott, who's one of our public sector specialists at Efficio. So Scott, can you tell us first, what is meant by covered procurement in a few words for those who haven't come across this term before? And what's the latest guidance telling us?
Hi, Yehui. Great to be on this series. So, a covered procurement in simplest terms means a procurement competition that is covered by the new Procurement Act. Specifically, the Act gives legal force to such provisions as an authority's obligation to not discriminate against suppliers from foreign countries with whom the UK has international treaties with, be it a standalone free trade agreement or through a company's membership of a government procurement agreement, to give just a few examples, and the duty to have regard for the National Procurement Policy Statement, which others have covered in previous episodes.
Okay, that's clear. So what's changing here?
So the Act brings further clarity to the definition of a public contract and sharpens, if you will, the focus and wording on how a public contract is defined. In particular, there's a specific change in wording to provide absolute clarity. What I mean here is we're moving away from what you might have heard before, which is the term consideration, to what is called a pecuniary interest. This change in wording is more significant as it removes any ambiguity that existed in previous EU-inspired regulations that some perceive to have held back financial support to British businesses due to a lack of real distinction between what is a public contract and a government grant for business support. As a result, there's now a clear distinction between business support activities such as grants or sponsorship schemes and public contracts subject to the Act, thereby freeing up resource and time for public procurement practitioners to focus on actual procurements, rather than business support schemes which may have previously fallen into a grey zone, potentially requiring a lengthy full-scale procurement process.
Thanks, Scott. Freeing up resources to focus on strategic work is always welcomed. Is there any other aspects that practitioners should be aware of?
So I think it's worth briefly speaking about centralised procurement authorities. These are obviously not new. Think of County Commercial Services or local authority consortiums such as ESPO, the Eastern Shires Purchasing Organisation. Rather, what's new in the Act is a very clear definition that if an authority chooses to delegate a procurement required to a centralised authority, that act of delegation and in turn any potential liability around about the award flows to a centralised procurement authority.
Interesting. Do you have any examples?
Yeah, it's now abundantly clear that a contracting authority can delegate its responsibility and liability for the award of a framework to a centralised authority. But if the same contracting authority then used the resultant framework to run a call-off competition, its responsibility and liability for any call-off award decision would remain with it.
Thanks, Scott. I think that was a really helpful summary of the key takeaways of the new guidance that was just published in the last week. I hope you enjoyed today's microcast and the topics we've covered this year. Please do post any thoughts or questions in the chat and get in touch with Scott or myself for any future topics you want to hear about. All our previous episodes are available through our LinkedIn page or YouTube channel, and we will see you in the new year. Happy holidays!